August 1944. High over Europe, Allied pilots fight an epic battle to take back the skies from Nazi Germany.
When the fighters did come in, tally ho, let's go get them.
Overcoming staggering odds, an exceptional group of pilots rises to meet a historic challenge.
We knew we could do it better than anybody else.
Pilots who fought not only the Luftwaffe in the skies, but also brutal prejudice in the American military.
Given the opportunity, blacks could perform as well as anybody else.
This is the story of the trailblazing Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Tails, told in their own words.
They call us Luftgangsters, air gangsters.
America's first African-American fighter pilots who became some of World War II's greatest aces and changed the course of American history. Summer 1944. The 332nd Fighter Group, better known as the Tuskegee Airmen, or Red Tails, has only been on the front line for a year, yet their reputation is soaring. The pilots' focus is on shooting down Nazi planes, but back home, their remarkable story has captured the imagination of black Americans.
College students at the time pinned up pictures of Tuskegee Airmen in their dorm rooms. They were the ideal. They were who little boys wanted to grow up to be and who little girls wanted to marry in the black community.
Ramitelli, Italy. Pilots of the 332nd cheer Charles McGee home after another successful mission over Germany, protecting American bombers. A 25-year-old engineering student from Ohio, McGee always knew he wanted to fly.
Given the opportunity, we accomplished something that many believed was not possible.
Most in the military high command doubt a man like McGee can fly a plane, let alone go into combat against the highly trained Luftwaffe. For McGee and his fellow Tuskegee Airmen, it's been an epic journey from prejudice at home to the front line in Italy. It all begins with Japan's devastating attack on the American fleet in Pearl Harbor, the event which brought the United States into World War II. 22-year-old Roscoe Brown, the son of a Washington political advisor, is eager to join up and fight for his country.
When the war started, we knew we were going to go, but we also wanted to go in the best circumstance. We wanted to be officers, we wanted to be pilots, we wanted to be Tuskegee Airmen. I was listening to the New York football Giants playing the Brooklyn Dodgers when I heard at halftime that the war had started.
I didn't know where in the heck Pearl Harbor was. Japanese? No idea. But everybody was at war. Everybody's going to the Army, Navy, Marines. I wanted to go to the Army Air Corps. I wanted to fly. But I was completely aware that it was impossible to become a pilot.
The Army policy was established based on a 1925 War College study. The premise was how to use this 1/10 of the American population if our country got involved in war again. What they said was that the American Negro physically was qualified, but mentally inferior, morally inferior. They should be used, but in service roles.
Tuskegee's origins date back to 2 years before the Japanese bombed the American fleet in Hawaii.
That no nation can appease the Nazis.
By 1940, with war looking inevitable, President Roosevelt is under pressure from African-American organizations to create more opportunities for blacks in the military, including the Army Air Corps.
Franklin Roosevelt announced that the Army Air Corps was going to open up this new training program for African Americans. It was going to be segregated, it was going to be separate from the rest of the Air Corps training programs, and it was going to be placed in Tuskegee, Alabama.
Fiercely opposed by many military top brass, The Tuskegee Experiment, as it's known, recruits the brightest and best of Black America, pulling college graduates from all over the U.S.
The Army Air Corps thought, we'll go by the letter of the law of what the policies tell us we have to do. We'll let these black people into pilot training, but there's no way they'll succeed because we all know black people can't fly airplanes.
We didn't feel it was an experiment. We knew we were going to be successful. We could be as good as anybody else.
Young men like Alexander Jefferson, who dreamed of flying as a child, now have their chance.
When an opportunity came to go to Tuskegee, I grabbed it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I was glad to go, eager to go. It was adventure. You're young, you're stupid. The flight instructors through primary, basic, and advanced were all white. All the rest of the base was black. Mechanics, cooks, truck drivers, all the upperclassmen were all black.
The revolutionary training program opens its doors in July 1941. The man handpicked to lead this all-new unit is Benjamin Davis. No stranger to adversity, he's got fighting spirit in his blood.
Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. was an exceptional leader. His father had been the first African-American general in the Army. Benjamin Davis had attended West Point in the early 1930s. And at West Point, he encountered the silent treatment.
No one ever spoke to him on campus, whether it was at the mess hall or the dormitory. He was shunned. You're treating you like a non-person, like an invisible man.
He was the one person for the job at that time. He was able to take the people and keep them together, mold them the way he wanted to mold them.
He was a soldier. We were civilians in Army clothes, let's face it.
In the face of entrenched prejudice, Davis knows his men will need to be not just competent, but among the very best if they're to beat the odds.
It's hard to put into words the feeling of those first flights, to be able to get off the ground and literally loop, roll, and spin a new environment.
Something different about being up in the air. Of course, the thing about it was that I still hadn't driven an automobile.
Did you come out of it as a second lieutenant? Little gold bar on your collar, set of wings, a pilot.
These men were pioneers of a venture so new that you who stand here before me now may still be considered forerunners in the movement which has given you a place in the fighting men of the sky.
Brazen, yes. We're looking forward to it. We weren't afraid.
The Red Tails get their first serious taste of combat in April 1943 during the Battle for Italy. The real test comes the following year. By June 1944, the Allies have taken most of Italy, and it becomes a crucial staging post for huge American bombing raids against Nazi Germany. Suffering grave losses from German hit-and-run attacks, the bombers desperately need protection. Top brass has no choice but to call in the Red Tails to help out, and they're transferred to frontline Italy. Finally, it's their moment to prove they're up to the job, not only to the enemy, but also to their fellow white airmen.
All right, gentlemen, settle down. Good morning. Good morning, sir.
You get up in the morning, and everyone would accumulate in the ready room.
Nothing too complicated today, boys.
V.O. Davis would be standing there. He was the commanding officer, the operations officer. Major lead would come in.
Our mission.
And you see the flight for today, the mission for today. Then down at the bottom would be Ramitelli.
Watch out for any 109.
That long red line would go all the way up to Germany. You'd hear it, everybody said, "Oh, crap."
Got our orders in Washington. What we're doing today.
Everything backtracked from what time you'd need to rendezvous with whatever bomb group you were assigned to.
We are escorting, ensuring their safe passage.
They needed escort protection.
By 1944, the Nazis are on the defensive, fighting on 3 fronts. From the east, the Russians are rapidly advancing through Poland towards Germany. The Allies send massive bombing forces from the west and south.
The Tuskegee Airmen assumed the escort role of 15th Air Force bombers.
The 15th Air Force was a long-distance bombing outfit. They can attack targets within the Greater Reich.
German airspace was defended heavily by German fighters. Allied bombers, though heavily armed themselves, required fighter protection. They could not survive without it.
Just a few years earlier, top brass assumed a black man was incapable of piloting a fighter plane. Now, the Tuskegee Airmen must show they have the right stuff for combat. Their lives and the lives of the bomber crews they're tasked with protecting depend on it.
Any guy who says he's not scared, he's a damn liar.
Across the Mediterranean, the Allies continue to target German positions in the battle to retake Europe. The Tuskegee Airmen are now in the midst of the action, playing aerial bodyguard to mass sweeps of bombers. Finally, they get an upgrade from the obsolete hand-me-down planes they've been flying in Italy. Along with their new status comes the Allies' best fighter, the P-51 Mustang.
What the P-51 has is great firepower, great maneuverability. It's small and light, it's very, very quick.
You could move it, you could turn it, you could bring it down, you could go fast, you could land it. It was a beautiful airplane.
It was so responsive. You push that throttle forward and you get so much power. And the thing just takes off.
The P-51 with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, that was the epitome of flying.
Instead of escorting the bombers part of the way, they can now stick to them like glue all the way into Germany and all the way back again, and give them continual fighter escort and support and defense. That gives the bombers a heck of an advantage.
The new P-51 may be best in class, but for Mustang rookies like Alex Jefferson and his friend Othell Dixon, there's a big learning curve.
Othell Dixon and I went down to the line to check out our new P-51s. Dixon outranked me, so quite naturally, he got a plane first. I sat there and watched him go into it. Here's how you check your mags. Here's how you start it. Here are the other controls, your radio.
Despite a lesson in the Mustang's controls, Othell Dixon makes a simple mistake.
He did not read the tech orders. And he flew around. As I waited for him to come back, I was going to use the same plane. And then flew down across, he buzzed to the airfield. Pulled up, a slow roll, fell out of it, and boom, went in, exploded, killed himself. We found out later the 85-gallon tank behind him was full, and you're not supposed to do any maneuvering. Throws your center of gravity off. Half hour later, okay, Jeff, your turn to go. I flew straight and level for about 2.5 to 3 hours, straight and level. Came back in and landed. No maneuvers at all. It scared the hell out of me. But that was my initiation into a P-51 Mustang.
We got 2 check rides in the P-51, and the third one we went on combat.
The Red Tails have been sent into combat because U.S. Bomber Command is losing men and machines at an alarming rate. In 1 month alone, the Nazis shoot down 114 heavy bombers. Over 1,000 men are lost. In response, Ira Eaker, Commander-in-Chief of the Mediterranean Allied Air Forces, issues new orders to the Red Tails and other fighter units. Don't chase German fighters. Stick close to the bombers and guard them with your life.
Eaker decided that the duty of a fighter pilot flying escort for the bombers is to protect the bombers. It's not to go out and shoot down German airplanes. And that was the edict that he passed down to the groups in Italy. Some groups took that extremely seriously.
Commanders like Benjamin O. Davis are determined his Red Tails follow Eaker's orders to the letter.
There is a reason why Benjamin Davis is so insistent on sticking to Eaker's mantra. He is perfectly aware that there are a lot of people out there looking out for any mistake they make.
Every time we go up,
He's just not going to allow that.
till we are more than capable.
They want to kind of prove that they are the equals of their fellow white Americans.
Flying close escort demands tight discipline.
We had 8 planes over here, 8 planes over here, and we would fly a crossing net across the bombers about 500 to 1,000 feet above them.
You're going faster than the bombers are going, so you just performed S patterns to keep with them. You had to keep your speed up.
We didn't leave them just because we saw German aircraft in the air, because they could have been decoys to draw us away.
The only time you really engage is when the fighters come close enough to attack the bombers. If they're out about 300 or 400 feet flying around, you don't engage them.
You want to go after them, you want to pursue them. But it took that kind of discipline that Davis exercised over his pilots to be able to constrain them to stay with the bombers.
Some guys wanted to piss off and go after Germans. Hell no. Full bird colonel tells you to keep your behind in formation.
Month after month, the Tuskegee Outriders escort bombers deep into Germany and Central Europe. Gradually, they gain a reputation with the men whose lives they safeguard.
Negro flight officers awarded wings. The War Department, it was learned today.
The black press would write articles about everything that we did, our combat exploits. It was on the front page of the paper. They began to talk about the all-Negro fighter group.
Service is to begin immediately for
They
all
emphasized that this all-Negro group was doing such a great job.
May the press.
Because some people didn't think we could do it.
Part of the pressure that they felt was that there are any number of people within the Army Air Forces who want to see us fail and are just looking for excuses to drum us out of the Air Force, to say they couldn't do it, the experiment failed.
The Red Tails were recognized by bomber crews as quite essential to their survival, to the point that some of the crews began to request the Red Tails. Ironically, they had no idea that the Red Tails were African American.
On missions over enemy territory, they know the Luftwaffe could appear at any moment.
People had to stay alert. Things can happen, you know.
Somebody would say, bogeys at 9 o'clock. Look out at 9 o'clock. Little black specks. 8 or 9, 10 miles away. Little black specks, back and forth.
If they attacked, you had to be ready for combat.
It was a dangerous business.
For the men of the 332nd, the war is set to become even more dangerous in the months to come. June 1944, Allied forces land on the beaches of Normandy, northern France, their compasses set for Berlin. At the same time, the mass bombing of Germany intensifies. The African-American Red Tails are emerging as a real fighting force, one that's increasingly in harm's way now that they've proved they're ready for action.
Now, instructions were not to leave the bombers, even if the German fighters were out there flying around.
The Luftwaffe's Focke-Wulf 190 is the scourge of the bomber squadrons. Fast, agile, armed with machine guns and cannons. In experienced hands, it's a match for the Red Tails Mustang. The directive to stick close to the bombers is relaxed.
If they then made a pass, that's when our flight leader would dispatch you.
Drop your tanks. Let's go get them.
Follow my lead.
Very intense. It's awfully fast. Awfully fast.
Zigging and zagging so you weren't flying in a straight line.
Everybody is moving back and forth. It's like a circle.
Luftwaffe fighter ace Hans Eckehard Bob remembers going into battle against the P-51.
Me and my squadron were caught in a dogfight with Mustangs. We had air combat for half an hour of spiraling. I flew like a madman.
When you press the trigger, you would activate the guns. You also activate a camera that would take pictures showing what you were firing at. It would verify that you shot down an airplane.
This guy decided to dive for the ground, and I was able to get on his tail. You got to lead your target. If you're shooting where he is, he's going to be gone when the bullets get there. And he went on, crashed into the ground. Often said, well, had he turned left, who knows what would have happened.
When a mission is successful, the Red Tails return to base with a flourish.
Come in low pass, pull up and do a roll, and come on around and land. Kind of a way of letting the folks know you had a successful mission.
When you got back on the ground, you knew you survived.
We knew we could do it, and we knew we could do it as well or better than anybody else, and we wanted to show that every time we flew.
Your job is to protect and defend. Should you find yourself in trouble or your man in trouble, you attack. Other than that, we defend and we protect. Magic lead, roll footage.
When you got back, they had the movies in the ready room. They would show them. They would show what you hit, what you didn't hit. It was very accurate.
You have to learn from the veterans. The veterans knew the combat maneuvers. They knew the spacing, knew how high we had to fly, how far apart we had to fly. Every time you go into the air, there's something new you can learn.
Under the watchful eye of Davis, the pilots of the 332nd form a tight-knit unit at their base in Ramatelli, Italy, a converted farmer's field near the Adriatic Sea.
They are an entirely self-contained black unit where they run the base. There are no whites at Ramatelli.
Throughout the war, the Tuskegee Airmen were an integral group, our own pilots, our own mechanics, our own radio operators, our own support personnel.
The reason for this is simple. At the time, U.S. Army Air Force rules say no black man can give a white man an order, a potential problem when a pilot automatically outranks his mechanic.
They're a raunchy bunch of characters, oh God. In their own individualistic way. You had to be. We talked about our girlfriends, our lives, airplanes.
We scrounged to build a bit of flooring in our tents to stay up out of the mud. It was quite primitive living, dealing with Mother Nature.
A stickler for discipline in the air, Commanding Officer Ben Davis cuts his men some slack in their downtime.
When you walked in, oh, yes, sir. Except across a poker table.
Well, Caesar came in last.
Andy up.
Across the poker table,
Ooh, sorry, boys, I gotta get in.
he would address you in your first name.
Done. It's been fun. Thanks, boys.
But about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, all of a sudden he would sit up and say, well, Lieutenant, bingo, we're back. We're military again. Time to cut the poker game. Yes, sir.
What's your purpose?
If you ever appeared before Colonel Davis, you had better be serious and ready for combat.
Having proven themselves in battle, the Tuskegee Airmen are handed another dangerous task. They're chosen to weaken German defenses in advance of an invasion of southern France, planned for August 1944.
So I know you boys have all the details. Just take a look at it here. Nothing too complicated. We know we gotta take out those radar stations.
We were told that there were radar stations on the coast of southern France. Tall towers with a lot of buildings.
Most of the work they've been doing has been very, very tight bomber escort work. This is an opportunity to engage the enemy, on their own terms, rather than being, hampered by having to kind of stick to bombers.
The mission involves one of the most hazardous tactics used by fighter pilots, ground strafing. The Red Tails must fly at extreme low altitude while firing directly at targets on the ground.
Some of our toughest missions were those low altitude strafing missions, because the anti-aircraft could focus on you as you're coming in, and boom, 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 boom.
Anti-aircraft defense fixes on you as a target as you approach straight in. You're like a sitting duck. That's the most dangerous task any fighter pilot ever has.
August 12, 1944, Toulon on the south coast of France. The Red Tails are sent to strafe heavily defended German radar. 16 planes in formation in groups of 4. The attack is on. Alexander Jefferson has clear memories of that day.
I'm number 16. I'm tailing Charlie, the last guy to go across the target. It was a beautiful day, clear, blue, and the first flight broke in for 15,000 feet, and the radios, of course, became aware. The whole side of the cliff opened up with anti-aircraft fire. Shells coming back at you. We start firing. We're doing about 400 miles an hour because we had shoved everything to the wall. I go right across the top of the target, and boom. I look up and there's a hole in the top of the canopy. The damn shell had come up out of the floor. But the fire came up, the gloves are burning. I had to bail out. During your 9 months of training, you never had 1 minute on how to get out of an airplane.
The Red Tails are on a strafing mission over the southern coast of France, knocking out German radar installations. They're paving the way for an Allied invasion. As pilot Alexander Jefferson flies over the target, his plane is hit by an enemy shell.
This damn thing came through so fast. And then the fire comes out of the floor, right in front of you. I gotta get out, it's hot. That was before ejection seats. I reach up and pull on the little red knob, and the whole canopy goes off. Pull back on the stick to get some altitude. I hit that buckle, boom, I came out. Catapulted out by centrifugal force. As I came out, I remember the tail going by with all that fire.
He makes it out with seconds to spare, but Jefferson's ordeal has just begun.
I remember looking down at the trees. I said, oh, the parachute popped. I'm in the trees. And I'm trying to get out, and I hear this guy, "Ach so, ja, Leutnant." I said, "Oh, Leutnant." What's that bullet? You got your name on it? I'm not worried about that one. I'm worried about that other one, to whom it may concern.
The Germans take Jefferson as a prisoner of war. The remaining Red Tails return to base, believing he's been killed in action.
They didn't see me get out, so when they got back to the squadron, they reported me as killed. My parents got a KIA telegram.
When people have been killed or captured, the realization hits you that, hey, this isn't kid stuff, you know.
The Allies are making headway against a weakened Luftwaffe at a cost. Between June and August 44, 18 Red Tails are killed or lost in action. Replacement pilots are in short supply, so tours of duty are extended.
Our replacements are very slow. I ended up with 82 tactical and 54 strategic missions before a replacement became available.
Vastly outnumbered by Allied fighters and crippled by the lack of fuel, the once mighty Luftwaffe is quickly losing its best pilots and its domination of the skies.
As the air war over Europe develops and Americans are sending 1,000 bomber raids from the 8th Air Force and 500, 600 bomber raids, the 15th, and the British are bombing Germany at night, the Luftwaffe finds itself increasingly overwhelmed.
Captured when the Germans shot down his Mustang, Alexander Jefferson remembers his first days as a prisoner of war.
We were being transferred to the prisoner of war camp. On the way there, we got to Frankfurt on the Main, where we were interrogated. I'm simply a pilot, following orders. I'm shooting up radar stations. I didn't know anything. They had my high school grades.
It's been a long night, yeah?
My college grades. They even knew how much taxes my dad paid on his house. They knew more about me than I knew about myself. And he pulled out a big book, and on the front of the book it said, 332nd Fighter Group, Negroes, Red Tails. You look at the books, God damn. They had all the pictures of every group that graduated at Tuskegee Army Airfield. I'm January 44. So I'm 44A. He said, "Lieutenant, isn't that you?" Pointing to me and my graduation picture.
Nothing familiar to you.
They call us Luftgangsters. Air gangsters.
German spies embedded in America mean Jefferson's interrogators know everything about the men in the 332nd. It's more than could be said for the rest of the U.S. military. Those superstars in the black press, many fighting Americans still have no idea that the Red Tails are an all-black unit.
If you were just paying attention to what you would read in the white press, you could easily miss this.
19-year-old bomber radio operator Bert Vardaman crash lands near the Red Tails Air Base in late March 1945. Bert remembers his surprise when he and his friends caught sight of the men of the 332nd.
We looked up and the whole crowd of African-American men were running down to where we were to see if we were okay. The planes were the Red Tails. Then immediately dawned on me, well, this must be the base where these fighter pilots that protect us take off and land. We didn't know where they came from. We didn't know anything about Tuskegee. We stayed with them 4 days and 4 nights until our base could send a plane from there to pick us up and take us back to our home base.
And we had good conversation, played cards, we drank liquor and so on. We were glad to have them.
So it's not until they landed at Ramitelli and they saw all these black people running the base that they realized that there are African Americans doing this in the United States Armed Forces. It was more secret than the atom bomb.
I was in a room with 9 other guys at Stalag Luft 3, 80 miles east of Berlin on the Polish border. Altogether, approximately 10,000 officers shot down over German-occupied territory. And the Germans knew everything about every man in the camp. It was an educated group of men. I was treated as another American, no animosity, no racism at all. But life inside the camp, we survived.
Security at the camp is brutally strict. The POWs are under constant watch.
To keep from going stark raving nuts, you occupied your time. I drew pictures. To sit down and start drawing pictures, I said, hey, wait a minute. I almost got killed. That's when you start seeing how close you came. Gotta tell you.
Although cut off from the outside world, the POWs devise ways to outsmart their captors.
We had a small radio. We listened to the BBC. So we kept up with the progress. We knew exactly what was going on. But there were German guards walking around inside the camp all the time. No matter what happens, you stay together. I knew how to survive.
By the end of 1944, in a last-ditch effort to save Hitler's regime and alter what appears inevitable, the Luftwaffe has developed a radically new fighter plane. It's a game changer, faster and more powerful than anything else in the sky.
I was the first one to see the jets at 9 o'clock. And I said, let's go and get them.
January 1945, Germany is under relentless Allied attack. Hitler's armies are reduced to defending their own borders and his Nazi stronghold in Berlin.
Pressure from overwhelming numbers of Allied bombers coming over day and night, destroying its factories on the ground and cutting off its oil supplies, forces the Germans to commit every last pilot they have to fend off these thousands of bombers over their territory.
We could outproduce them in training pilots and building airplanes. Every time we shoot down one, it means another one won't come back tomorrow.
What the Luftwaffe lacks in numbers, it hopes to make up for with technology. Since the early days of the war, German scientists have been experimenting with jet propulsion. Now, in a last-ditch effort to turn the tide, the Luftwaffe unleashes their advanced fighter plane, the Messerschmitt Me-262.
The Me-262 was the first major jet to come into combat. And they were, you know, clearly the next generation.
The speed of the 262 is unmatched, capable of almost 560 miles per hour. It's more than 100 miles per hour faster than the P-51 Mustang.
They obviously had good chances with the bombers when they approached them with that speed. By the time they noticed them, they were already shot down.
Tuskegee Airmen had heard rumors about German jet fighters. It was totally another thing to encounter a plane in combat.
For the Red Tails, their first sighting comes on a mission over Berlin. On the 24th of March, 1945, Lieutenant Roscoe Brown leads the 100th Squadron.
On the Berlin mission, we had to be alert. I saw these trails. Bogey's 9 o'clock. I said, "Go tanks, follow me."
Dropping the extra fuel tanks makes the Mustang lighter, faster, more maneuverable.
I flew under the bombers in a modified split S away from the jet. I had made such a tremendous maneuver, I had lost my wingman. I'm over Berlin at 25,000 feet by myself. So I'm over Berlin, pulling on, pull the trigger, and just keep that circle on it as you fly. And the bullets went right into the middle. He blew up. The best stories are the stories that you do spontaneously. We had that record of being the first to shoot down jet planes over Berlin. I came right down tent row, right between the tents, pulled it up, did a couple rolls, came back the other way, pulled it up, did a couple rolls. So everybody was very thrilled with that, as was I. And we knew we had done something great.
6 weeks after Roscoe Brown shoots down the Me-262, Germany runs up the white flag. The most destructive war in history is finally over. The Red Tails have overcome heavy odds to become one of the greatest units of World War II. Their remarkable tally, 112 enemy aircraft shot down, 150 planes destroyed on the ground, over 100 rail wagons demolished in ground attacks. Along the way, 66 make the ultimate sacrifice.
Some of the men who were damn good pilots got killed. That's the game. You win some, you lose some, but you make progress.
The Red Tails earned 3 distinguished unit citations, officially recognizing it as one of the elite fighter groups in the U.S. Army Air Force. It's an extraordinary achievement for a unit of men who were told African Americans can't fly, let alone become fighter pilots. Like thousands of his comrades, prisoner of war Alexander Jefferson is liberated by U.S. soldiers.
When we were liberated by General Patton's Third Army, they moved in a field kitchen with mashed potatoes, hot biscuits, gravy, huge steaks. We knew we were going to get sick. Many of us had lost weight. We ate like dogs. We all got sick from dogs. But it was heaven. What a day, what a day.
The thrill of going home is short-lived for Jefferson and other African-American troops.
Coming back to the United States, Statue of Liberty, flags waving, walking down the gangplank, whites to the right and niggers to the left. God damn it, coming back home. What a hell of a feeling.
And with the white troops, there was a band and about 30, 40 reporters. With the black troops, there were 2 reporters and a saxophone player.
The Tuskegee experiment is an unprecedented success, and the change it represents can't be held back for long. In 1948, in part because of the achievements of the Red Tails, all branches of the military end the policy of segregation.
The leaders of the Air Force finally came to understand that it was totally impractical and inefficient to establish 2 separate Air Forces, one white and one black.
In 1948, when this begins happening, there's only one other institution in the United States that's even beginning to desegregate, and that's Major League Baseball.
When they said that blacks couldn't play baseball, Jackie Robinson came in, the black players came in, they played better than anybody else. Same thing with the Air Force. And that's why the story of the Tuskegee Airmen resonates, because we overcame that racism was obstacles that now we recognize as being the best of the best.
By winning the war on two fronts, against prejudice at home and fascism in Europe, the Tuskegee Airmen, the iconic Red Tails, won their place in the history books.
Given the opportunity, blacks could perform as well as anybody else.
All the rest of the Tuskegee Airmen basically were the same kind of grit. You had to have that kind of grit in order to just goddamn survive.